Hi, friend. Thank you for joining us at Pasture Experience Podcast. This podcast, inspired by Psalm 23, is a safe space to be honest with yourself, experience the Trinity on your own pasture journey, and join our soul-nourishing conversations wherever you are on your spiritual path. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you feel encouraged and known. Well, I'm so excited to introduce you to my dear friend, Suzanne, who is also the founder of Come As You Are Cakes, a home bakery. Suzanne, I got to meet a couple years ago when we moved to Nashville, Tennessee. But I invited her here today to really I want to hear your heart about, where you are in your own pasture journey. And that's the question that I ask all of our guests starting off. And then specifically just your journey in letting go of expectations. So, Suzanne, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored. I'm excited to be here.
I love it. Where in Psalms 23 are you most resonating right now in your own pasture journey?
Well, I would say for this year, as you can see, I've written some things down because the Lord has definitely taken us through a journey in the last year. I would say if I can back up a little to say where I got, how I got where I am now. But I would say 2018 was definitely a journey of the rod and the staff.
Yeah.
And how God's rod and staff comforted me as a mom, but it was definitely a season of refining and awakening and letting go of expectations. Like you said, things were not going the way, you think they're going to go. And definitely a season of kind of pruning some things out of our life. And as God took us through that, this year, I'm so thankful to say that I feel like we are, my soul is being restored. So that's kind of where I'm at in my pasture journey right now.
I love that. So you've gone from sort of that comforting and that discipline to now you feel that restoration.
Yes.
You talked about expectations. What expectations did you have for your role as a mom or even just for you individually on your spiritual journey?
Yes. I was raised in the church. I was raised in a Christian home. And I think there's a lot of, I was kind of believing a lie that if I did certain things and I raised my kids a certain way and took them to church and prayed over them and taught them scripture, that everything would turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. And
how was that? What did that look like? What was that expectation?
The expectation was, I think that, honestly, that life would be easy and that my kids I think I had an expectation that my kids would be little mini me's of me. And I found out, especially as they became teenagers, that's not the case. Yeah. And a little of my personal story, and as I shared with you, Becca, in different conversations we've had, is as your kids get older, their story is theirs to share. But as parents, we walk it with them, and so it's our story to share as well, and kind of bridging what is ours to share and what is theirs to share. So I'll share some details today that I think are very respectful of what we went through as a family and what my son went through. But I have a son who had shared with me about a year ago that he was really struggling with depression and anxiety. And it didn't just look like depression and anxiety. It looked like anger and a pulling away and some defiance. And one day I was driving with him and said, hey, what's going on with you? What's wrong? And he shared that he was really struggling. And as a mom, I said, that's so normal. It's so normal to feel that way, and your hormones and everything's changing and all that. And he said, no, Mom, I don't think you understand. And he shared with me that he had thought of taking his own life. And that flipped everything upside down for us, because that's definitely not an expectation, That's
not what we do.
That is not what we do. Exactly. And especially with with how we'd raised them in Christian schools and all that. Up
How
until
did you
that point,
respond in that moment when he told you that?
we were driving, and so I actually pulled over to the side of the road, not in a panic or a frenzy, but just thought, wow, like this isn't something you just, casually tap your son on the knee and keep going. And we just kind of pulled over to a side road. And honestly, as I responded, I was praying just, okay, Lord, this is those moments you read about in other people's lives.
Sure.
This is a big deal. How I respond is a big deal right now. And I'm glad that the Lord led me in that, because I would say it'd be my personality naturally to kind of panic and freak out. And I didn't, thankfully.
Yeah.
But we talked through and sat there, and I asked him more specifics and everything. And we got through that moment, and life went on. And my next move was, calling my husband and calling a doctor and, getting him the help that he needed. And part of our journey in that is that a few months after that happened, we ended up taking him to a treatment center, an inpatient treatment center where he was. And that was not something we expected, and I think, as you and I have talked about before, there was a lot of guilt and shame, and just the Lord pruning me of my own pride in that, and realizing that, wow, this is going to be part of our journey I wasn't expecting.
Sure.
And how, where do we go from here?
Sure.
So
who were those safe people that you felt like you could talk with in this journey, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you had texted that we'd be talking about is like, how did Jesus meet me in that space, and how did we experience his love? And it's interesting that today you asked who, because I think we experienced his love through people, and his faithfulness in ways we had never experienced before, very specific ways that I was like, oh wow, this can only be the Lord. But what was interesting is all of the things that you think are going to happen in a moment like that you're going to be embarrassed, that you're, what are you going to tell people? What are you going to, the people who show up and love you and sit there in just the messiest, most difficult season of your life, those people are gifts, and they're treasures. And we experienced church in the love of Christ in the darkest days of our lives through people showing up at 8:00 at night at our doorstep to pray for us. Showing up while our son was gone. We had redecorated his room while he was gone, just to have like a new space for him to come home to. Then the weekend before he came home to say, hey, we want to come in here, we want to pray over his room, and we want to bless his bed, and we want to pray over his chair, and we want to just cover him. And so that was the love of Christ in a way that we had not experienced.
Gosh, that's beautiful. And when you talked about that part of like the discipline and the comfort, how did you experience Jesus in very out of the box ways that maybe sometimes didn't fit in the church or in these other structures during that season?
It's interesting how when you are humbled, whether, because I was going to say when you humble yourself, but sometimes we don't humble ourselves. Sometimes we are humbled. And it was an experience of humbling, and just setting aside perfection, and setting aside our own expectations to go, okay, how do we walk in this now? How it drops you to your knees in a new way. And in some ways, having him at the treatment center was such a relief, because I knew he was safe and I knew he was getting help. There was also so much wonder, and, he was away, but I didn't want to quite let go of him. And so one day I prayed, Lord, just if you could show me how and when to pray for him while he's gone. And not that I was afraid. I thought about him all the time, but I wanted it to be productive. I think a lot, but my thoughts aren't always productive.
Sure.
And so like, okay, Lord, if you could show me times and ways specifically to pray. And I in no way think that God is like a genie in a bottle where we just, here, God, do this, do that. But it was so interesting praying that and how the nearness of him in that moment of insecurity and pride and shame and all those things that were in the process of being weeded out. One of my prayers was, Lord, show me how to pray and when to pray. And it was the craziest thing. Shortly before he left for the treatment center, he was learning to play ukulele. Okay. And he would play the same song over and over and over because it was the only song he knew. Right. And it's like, okay, can we maybe learn another song? And the song was Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Oh. And so he had the little, tune and he would sing. And I mean, it's not a popular song. Yeah. It's not on the radio. But as I prayed that prayer, Lord, show me, I would hear that song on the radio. I would hear that song in a store would come over, and that would be like my little reminder to go, okay, pray for him now, pray for these things. We would find, he plays the guitar, we would find guitar picks in the most random we have a huge driveway. In the middle of the driveway, I'd be running in to get something, and there's a guitar pick, and it was like the Lord showing me, stop and pray for him right now. I love that. Not knowing what is going on, but so there was a lot of personal things.
I love that. Well, I love that you were aware to see it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because you were talking earlier about like this awakening. And I think that awakening in our journey sometimes kind of invites us to pay attention to experiencing just this whole journey in out of the box ways. And so I love that you're like, oh, there's a pick. There's a song.
And when your life is pruned down and that, you kind of learn like, wow, we've got a lot of weeds and dead stuff, and God starts to clip those things away, and it's painful. Oh, yeah. It's not comfortable. It's not something you want to post on social media. Right, it's, there's a real just softening that happens in your heart. And when there's not a lot left there, what is left is what's important.
Completely.
And so.
And what's important right now?
Ooh, you didn't tell me you were going to ask that question. I think what is important right now is living in the truth of what is. And instead of always trying to make something the way I want it to be or the way I thought it was going to be, but living in the truth of what is now and realizing that God is doing something way bigger than what I think should be, and choosing joy. Even in the hard times, not letting our circumstances dictate our soul path, where we're going to go or how we're going to respond.
I love that. Just trusting what is.
Yes, and just laying down in the pasture and letting him restore your soul, even if things aren't how you thought they're going to be.
Right. Can you share more about what that soul restoration has looked like for you? Like, how is Suzanne's heart, how does your soul feel different now than before when you wanted everything perfect?
I think it's literally like opening your hands. I know that can be cliche a little bit. Instead of holding on to everything, it's opening your hands. It's letting myself off the hook.
Say more about that. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think just the expectations that we put on ourselves or the perceived expectations that others have on us that maybe are or aren't there, whether we grab onto an expectation that maybe that is an expectation, but just to go, got to let myself off the hook. I have to let other people off the hook. Letting other people be on their own journey, which you're so good at. Yes. Instead of trying to fix and change and make better and wrapping everything up with a pretty bow.
No bows.
Yeah, no bows. Wildflowers, right? Yes. Yeah. So I think I've been set free of a lot of things, and it's been pretty great.
I love that. What does freedom feel like in your body? Like, where do you notice it?
Ooh, lots of places. Probably probably my gut, maybe my shoulders,
Okay.
just kind of let it be easy, learning to let things be easy instead of, I'm learning what's easy, what's not easy,
Yeah. I almost hear you choosing which thing to like fight for and which thing to just surrender and release.
Yes.
And
100%.
in that there's freedom.
Yes.
Which is so much easier to say, but when we can tell inside of us, when, like you said, like when you feel like there's like your gut's opening, your shoulders.
Yeah.
It's always easier to say, it's fine, it's good. Like, but to really know that,
yes,
I think is so beautiful.
And just kind of learning to, like, if something's not okay, it's okay that it's not okay. It's just a chapter in a bigger story, right, almost, instead of, I think before this experience that I've gone through as a mom and that our family went through, just, holding on to everything so tight and just and trying to fix and change and just to go, okay, this is where we're at. We're moving through it, and letting other people move through it, and not letting, like I said, our circumstances dictate just your every emotion or holding things in your body.
Right, completely. We're such a society that's focused on our circumstances. So now how does that shift your perspective these days, when things are going crazy and you're not in control? How does that feel different?
Feels different. Let me think about that.
I'm throwing you off, aren't
you
I?
are. Like, these are not these questions. I kind of want to look at my notes and go, what did I write down about that? I think what I've realized and a huge change, a friend actually said this in one of our difficult moments. We had some friends come over and pray for us over this last year. And he said, on our best day, when you just feel that, and your kids are good and happy and the laundry's done and you just feel like life is, you're kind of exhaling. Yeah. So on your best day, when everybody's kind of where they're supposed to be and you feel you're where you're supposed to be, really all we have is 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Jesus does the rest anyway. Yeah. And so anything good that I would have to share or sow into my children or sow into my family or sow into a friend, it's because of what God is doing, not because of what I'm doing. And that's been a big shift for me. That's to take the pressure off, to let myself off the hook and going, what God is doing is good. He's good. Even when circumstances aren't what I would choose, He is doing a good thing. And that's a restful thought.
Yes, it does. It takes you off the hook. You just get to be.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
I love that.
And, even in little ways, I mean, just for other women and moms that are out there, like when the house is a mess and things are piling up or kids are in a phase of tantrums or whatever, is just let yourself off the hook a little bit. Let your kids off the hook a little bit. And that doesn't, do what you can do.
Right.
But trust sometimes in the bigger things that seem so important, that God is still working and He's still moving, and you can rest because of Him. You can rest even in those seasons.
Right. And you walked through that and you've experienced it. I mean, has experience changed everything for you?
I think it has. And I was thinking about this a while back, talking to a friend, is I would never want to go through what we went through again.
I bet. But
again, this sounds kind of cliche and silly, like, put this on a little meme or something, but I'm thankful to have gone through it. I almost wish I would have gone through it sooner in my life, because I feel so much more set free than before.
Was the freedom from just completely not having control and surrendering those expectations?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
And how is God more real to you? I mean, how is your spiritual journey shifted because of that experience?
Yeah, I think just realizing, and we've talked about this before, that God and who He is and what He's doing is so much bigger than we realize, but also so much simpler than we realize. And I don't know how to bridge that. I don't know why that makes sense to me, but it does. And I think learning that through this experience and other experiences that we've had and that I've had, walking through fires and situations with friends, and experiencing their journeys with them as you like pair up with people and go, I'm in this with you, to go. Sometimes it's easier to see in other people's journeys than your own, but yeah, just to realize like that he is so much bigger and his plan is so much better and so beyond what we can comprehend.
Sure.
But yet it is in the little things that he's showing up. And so.
Isn't that so funny? We always think it's like these big epic moments, in parenting or in life. And it's so always in the small and just the repetitive and the sacred. So I love that that's how he's kind of meeting you. And where would you say you're in your pasture journey today?
I would definitely say I've got Psalm 23 pulled up because I love it so much. I would say my soul's being restored, and just I love in verse 3 where it says he guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that just in the last couple of days as I've been getting ready for this podcast. Is I even wrote down not my name, his name.
Yeah.
And that's where that pride can come in to go, how's this look on me? And what are people going to say about me as a mom and my son, and wanting to protect all that and go, he's guiding me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake, and just trusting that he's going to guide. His rod and his staff are going, it might not be comfortable, but it's for our protection.
Yeah.
And he's doing a good thing.
And sometimes it does not, it never looks like how we think it's going to look.
Yep.
We go down to the dark spaces and we come out and that's lonely and it's scary and we're out of control. But I love that that's where restoration's coming.
Yeah.
And how is your son now?
He's doing amazing.
And that's not always the case, right? There's not always the story with the bow.
Oh, gosh, no. And I think part of doing amazing is school's out. He passed all his classes. He missed the first 47 days of school because he was gone.
Right.
The school that he was able to attend was a gift.
Yeah.
They loved him and they loved us. And he's going to struggle, and we're going to struggle with him and we're going to get through it. I don't mean to tie everything up as a cute little, oh, now everything's better, but oh, what a difference a year makes.
Absolutely.
And I think also just, gosh, get the tools in your toolbox, and I think I heard somebody say this recently, when your kids are little, like you have all the answers, and as you get, the older you get and the older your kids get, you realize I know nothing.
We don't know what we're doing.
People call me, what do I do about this? I don't know. I have no idea. And that's freeing to say.
Yes,
I don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe that's just a beautiful way as we're wrapping up this episode. I just want to say I love how much you sat in that with your son. I think that he was so brave, to be honest.
Yes, he was.
And I can't encourage enough people out there. I think that when we're honest with ourselves first and we share that, the freedom that comes for him too, but then for your whole family ultimately. What is one wisdom nugget that you would love to just send our listeners and our viewers off with that you've learned? Or encourage them with?
Yes. Just to put your perfection aside, put your ideas aside. Let yourself off the hook. And I hate to be repetitive.
I love it.
Yeah, just look for God's tangible reminders that he's with you. Find friends that aren't afraid to sit in the mess with you and aren't scared off by a hard situation. Because really it's a matter of time before
life happens.
Before we're all there eventually,
Right. And you're able to offer that to others now. And I love that.
Oh, yeah. I don't judge anybody anymore.
No. Judgment-free zone.
Yes, judgment-free zone, for sure.
For sure.
Yes.
Okay, friend, as we close our time together, I want you to be able to share about your Come As You Are cakes.
Thank you. So I started Come As You Are Cakes about 3 years ago at the encouragement of a friend. Said, you should start a business. You should start a business. I said, oh, I'm not trained. My cakes aren't perfect. If I make 3 vanilla cakes, they're all going to maybe look a little different. I don't have the continuity. And she said, you make the best cakes ever. You've got to do it. Here's some money. Make me some chocolate cupcakes. And I thought, I think I just started a business. And I put a post on social media, and I've been baking every week since. And it's Come As You Are Cakes because, come as you are. If you get a vanilla cake, it might have smooth edges one day, and next week order another one and it might not. So it's just grown, and I'm so thankful for all the support, and it's
and your cakes are incredible. How can we find you on Instagram? Are you Come As You Are Cakes?
Come As You Are Cakes on Instagram.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we also can follow you there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, keep cooking and baking because it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, friend. As always, thank you for taking time out of your space and your day to join us here at Pasture Experience Podcast. I hope that you were able to, during our time, just listen to yourself and experience a new nugget of how the shepherd is inviting you and meeting you. And I'd love to just end our time reading Psalm 23 over you as you go about your day. May you know that he is with you, regardless of what your circumstances look like. Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. And surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Grace and space to you today.